And I heard it phrased one way from one client, and I never forgot about it. And this is now how I kind of go into client meetings now, where that first month into retirement, guess what didn't show up? There's no paycheck.
Hey, Nick.
Scott, what is going on?
Oh, just about to start summer. Pretty excited.
Yes, just had Memorial Day. It is now the official kickoff of summer, and weather's turning a corner. I'm ready
Yep.
for the beach. Yes.
This will come out in a couple weeks, so we'll probably be at the beach by the time it comes out.
That's right.
Summer's here and in full swing. Let's go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as it's not a good transition or pivot today, but let's roll with it anyway. As we move into summer, one of the things that I see people dealing with is not spending enough of their retirement income. No, one of the things we weren't joking about. We were talking about before this we aired today. It's just that one of the things that you kind of get taken back by as an advisor, because you're consulting people on their life savings, is that many times the people who come see us have been amazing at being savers, and it's very hard for them to transition into being spenders. So I thought we could take some time to talk about that today.
Yeah. You would think it's such an easy flip to switch, right?
Right.
But it's not. There's so many hidden emotions that come with it. And traditionally, if you've been a good saver and your assets have grown and now you're at a point and thinking, is it time to retire? Or maybe you already know that answer, but now it's just you need the permission to give yourself to then transition into retirement. It's a different ball game, and so stepping into that, there could be a lot of things that come up that we don't know today.
It's just like going from spending in retirement is just harder than people expect. To put it plainly, and so let's just take a little time to unpack some of the reasons why, and let's also think about the things that people can be doing to prepare themselves and be, and to work through that. Because there's certainly some psychological barriers. And there's, of course, things that we help clients do to build confidence in their spending. So we can look at that. And then, also look at meaningful spending and kind of some tools people can look at and maybe some mistakes to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think there's so many different things we could think of client stories along the way of things that come up and, what our role is in that. And so.
Yeah. Now, the first one I actually think is kind of easy to come by, because most people, it's like, hey, Nick, you've been working for 30, 40 plus years and you're going to retire and you have this pile of money. What's the top issue that most people have when they start spending their money? Right?
Yeah. I think there's always that fear, right? Am I going to run out of money? I heard it phrased one way from one client, and I never forgot about it. And this is now how I kind of go into client meetings now, where that first month into retirement, guess what didn't show up? There's no paycheck.
Right.
That was really scary.
Right.
And so now, we call it a paycheck. Like, when Mr. and Mrs. Client, when do you want your paycheck in retirement to start? Really, that's the role of your investment portfolio. We can get into that at a later time, but it could be really scary of, this is what we've saved and accumulated. Is it enough? Now we're moving in opposite directions. Before we were adding to our account. Now we're withdrawing from the account. And there's a lot that goes into that.
Totally. I mean, it's absolutely the fear that you're going to run out, right? This isn't going to work out. I'm going to retire and a recession's going to hit right away and I'm going to lose all of my money and I'm not going to have it. Or some people honestly start, in a sense, feel guilty about spending the money, especially as different people have different mindsets. Like if you grew up with an abundance mindset, you probably don't have this as much because you're like, money just shows up. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out. But if you had a scarcity mindset, you're like, man, I got to squirrel this away. Like I remember my grandparents, it's not necessarily about money specifically, but like they would keep like 8 cans of everything in their pantry and they would like backload it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it was like, they always knew they had enough. They always squirreled. It was like Depression era stuff, right? They always made sure they weren't going to run out, but they never, they were really a little close to the chest on their spending. They didn't go run around and spend willy nilly. And then of course there's like uncertainty about expenses, right? Of course, I think I know what my life is like today, but what if a big healthcare thing comes up, or what if, God forbid, one of us needs long-term care, or anything else for that matter? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and we're hearing it today. Things are more expensive. So what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Obviously, sometimes the human brain will play tricks on each other and just, we'll go to the extremes. That happens at times. Or just my luck, a recession is going to happen. Or just my luck, there was a market downturn, right? And so we tend to get hyper fixated on really negative news, whereas before we probably weren't paying as much attention to it. Totally. And so this is why, like, having that plan or just being able to like talk through it and say, like, let's back up a step.
Such a good transition, because that's exactly where my head goes too. We're on the same page, Nick. Yeah. And that's what you and I do all the time with clients, right? We build a financial plan with the client to look at what is your spending realistically going to be, down to like, how often are you going to buy new cars? What kind of vacations are you going to be taking? Yeah, right? We want to know the details. We want you to dream. So there's some bandwidth in there.
Yeah, I have this really cheesy saying that's like, specific is terrific. And it's just like, to your point, what is the vacation that you want to go on?
That is really cheesy.
Yeah. Recently became a dad. So,
so you think you're allowed to do dad jokes now?
Yeah, I feel like, it's like a muscle I now have. So the worst of jokes.
I don't know that you're actually allowed to. We'll have to let the audience decide. I'm sure your wife does not think you're allowed to. But to your point, one of the things that I think you and I would look at, and please add any color that you want, but like the basic things that I'm thinking about would be, someone comes in and they're fearful of their spending or what they're going to need to spend. I just quickly want to know, well, okay, what are the baseline things that we're going to get? Like if we're going to get Social Security and, are we going to delay it and turn it on at 70, or do we have a reason to turn it on earlier so we know what that income's going to be? Do we have a pension? Are there any annuities that need to be turned on or not? And then we look at the traditional withdrawal rate from investments. And the traditional withdrawal rate, the one that, you kind of mentioned before, what if I retire and a recession happens right away? Well, there's this guy, Bill Bengen, and his original research that he did back in the 90s was on what if you retire in the worst year possible, which I believe was 1974. How much can you withdraw from your portfolio and be okay for 30 years? And the rule was a little bit more than 4% of your withdrawal. Some other guys came along, Guyton and Klinger, and did something different where they said, well, what if you're willing to like spend a little less if things get really bad, right? Like how often have we ever had a big downturn in the markets and you just kind of go like, I don't need to go on like the vacation to Europe this year. I can just stay local, right? Like I don't have to do as much. Well, once we know what that is, so you can spend a little bit more. Well, now we know what your numbers are. We can look at them after tax. So we can go, here's how much income you get to have every month. How does that feel for a 40-year time frame? Plus adding in your retirement income from Social Security and other things. And then if you know that for the baseline, I think then you and I are such huge fans of aligning money with life. Yes. I know we both feel that money is just a tool for people. It's not the thing. It is a thing, and its purpose is to help people live great lives. So what are the things they need to be doing in their life while they're still here to live an awesome life? What are those bucket list goals? What are the lifestyle things they want to be doing?
I hear a few things there. And, for me, the biggest thing I'll play on is like creating that alignment, right? Giving yourself that permission. A lot of times, especially with these clients that the avatars that we've created here, good savers, good accumulators, those types, probably know the numbers are going to work. Now it just becomes a permission. Whether you're retired or not. I had a client come in the other day, prospective client that is, and wasn't going to retire for a couple of years, but cash flow felt really tight for business owners. And we're looking at, the different accounts that they've saved and accumulated. And it was like, I don't think I could touch this until I retire. And it's like, well, so like, let's run the numbers for a second. We know you're going to have different liquidity events down the line.
Yeah.
If you can give yourself some more breathing room today, like, who says you have to wait for this predetermined time to be able to give yourself that breathing room? And so, that idea of like creating alignment, it doesn't start at retirement.
No.
Right. And so whether it's today, whether it's, off in the distant future, like, what are things we could be doing today to be able to create that alignment? Because money, simply at the end of the day, it's a tool for us to live our best, most fulfilled, authentic lives.
Yeah, no, you're nailing it there. And, that actually reminded me of a client who came in, and they went from a 7-figure income down to a 6-figure income. That was like 25% of what their old income was, right? But they were doing it so that they could be with their family while their family was growing up. And they were going to eventually have a pension as well. They would make it so they were totally fine in retirement. They just had these years between that they have to figure out, how do we bring these things together? So we actually took their retirement assets and did this thing called a 72T that basically annuitizes their IRA assets to create income for them while their kids are growing up, because now's when they need it. They don't need that income when they have a full pension when they retire. So to your point, it's all about like, no, we have our own capital inside of us, and then we have our financial capital, and then we go like, how do we optimize those things? Yes. And the answer is not, I think for you, the thing about it is, Nick, I think that a lot of people, and I think rightly so, a lot of people think that a lot of advisors really just want people to bring assets to them and help them grow and never have them go down. And that's because the business is made so that as more assets come, people get paid more. But there's a tiering strategy, a tier of the percentage that people pay the advisor. And so eventually, like, the extra dollars coming in really aren't that much anyway. It's really about helping people live a great life, which is the way you and I think about it.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of nails it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'm always, there's absolutely that aspect of it where the way in which the industry is aligned and incentivized. Absolutely. And so when we start diving into kind of how we approach life planning, or what it means to kind of live that authentic life and use your money as that tool to start doing that, I'm always so curious too, once the data supports it, because we've talked earlier about, like, you talked about Guyton and Klinger and Bengen. And, I always say it's a simple math equation. It's what you've accumulated, what you need to take out. Let's divide the two. Like, where are we at? But, at the same time, like, life is anything but that simple. And so once we run the numbers, why is it so hard to give ourselves permission? Sometimes we know the numbers are going to work, but there's just that gut feeling that people can't articulate of like, I know something's bad going to happen, or maybe I'm spending too much. And it's like, we're going to do everything that we can on our end to make sure that we have the data to support that.
Yeah.
Permission's a hard thing.
No, I agreed. I think from another frame that this kind of brings up with the spending, when people especially scared to spend, we were kind of mentioning there was that book, Die with Zero.
Oh, that's right.
Which someone else wrote who's not in finance. And I think, again, it kind of speaks to the fact of like most advisors, I think, probably are trying to get assets to go up. We're in a sense with life planning, in a sense saying like, hey man, like literally don't die with zero, because dying with zero probably makes you destitute, and we don't want to see you do that. Yeah. But certainly don't die with like tens of millions of dollars going to other people. Like, find ways to use it in your life now, whether that's in your own life to have a great life for yourself, or giving back to family members, to the community, to foundations, to charities, and the like. Like, give it while you're living, and live it. Don't just sit on it.
Yeah. I mean, because, I'm speaking directly to like the retirement audience, or, if you're approaching retirement, even if you're in your mid to late 40s and you're like, okay, well, maybe it's 10 to 15 years away. We also know too, like, each year of retirement, it's not created equal. No. When we look at the things physically that we're able to do in our 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's very different than in our late 70s, early 80s, 90s.
I was smiling
I see what you did there.
because it's the go-go years.
No, that's a deep cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's really the three phases of retirement. It's the go-goes, the slow goes, and the no-goes. And that's how we see spending happen, right? We
Yeah.
see clients spend more on the front end, less in the middle, more on the back end. But the back end's usually health expenses.
With them.
What are the things that you typically will use with clients to help them see what they can spend? Like kind of in a sense, give them permission to spend.
Yeah. We like to model it all out there. So,
Yeah.
we've talked about this before. It's really easy for me or for clients, I feel like, to plan the next like 6 months of their life, maybe 12, maybe 18. And then after that, things start to get a little murky, especially when we start talking into like 5 or 10 years from now. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But when we can use some of the financial planning software to model out like every single worst case scenario, we were just like, hit me with your best shot. Like, what is it? Do we want to retire in like the worst statistical year ever? Do we want to overspend on a retirement, or what you think overspending on a vacation is? And that's why we have the data. But then like, that's only part of the equation. As we talked about earlier, it's like, okay, you have this, go sit on it for a while. Now, are you actually going to do it? And the thing that we enjoy doing too, whether it's April was a crazy month, as we know in markets, right? And we talked about that. We, with a lot of our clients and building trust, have been working with them for a very long time. So we've been through downtimes in the market, and we have that trust. And so what it's allowed us to do is go back and run those models and look at during that time, how would it have changed?
No, absolutely. I think showing the models is very helpful. And the thing is that models are just simply a tool. To be clear, we're putting in real data about where we are at this exact moment, and then we're asking questions about where we think things can go in the future, not knowing at all where they'll go in the future. But it's better to guess and have some form of like idea of how good or bad are we going to be than none at all. But then with even that, we can come back and we can rely with some level of very high level of confidence. You can rely on those withdrawal rates. That data is pretty tried and true at this point. So you can come back and look at that and go like, hey, here's what you can reasonably spend with a very high likelihood that you won't run out of money. It can't be said that you won't, because there's always a time that could come up that we just don't know about. We all might need gold and Dinty Moore stew in the future. We just don't know, right? But from what we know of Western civilization, we think you'll be okay.
Right.
So we can definitely do that, and we can map it out, right? And show you where's it going to go. I think that's cool. I think another thing that we can do is, especially for those because there are clients, I don't know about you, Nick, but I have clients where I'm like, man, there's no way you guys are going to spend it all in your lifetime.
Yep.
But they still kind of have this, like, they feel like they don't have the permission to go spend. I love allocating money to specific reasons in specific accounts. Right. Not even that we hold, but like for them, it's like, hey, go set up a savings account that just says like family vacations, where you're taking your family on vacations to do whatever you want to do. And go spend it, right? Absolutely. Go make those memories.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, it gets easier, I would say, on paper when you're in your 70s, because the IRS quite literally makes you take money out, called required minimum distributions. And, for those type of clients that have, we'll say, issues with spending, I'll say, hey, you're not allowed to reinvest it back with us. Go put it in the bank account, and then go timestamp it for, that travel cruise in 2 years with the kids. Go make those memories. That's what you work so hard for. Yeah. And the clients that are fearful, again, not to be too data dependent, but like so many of our meetings, we start with, well, what's changed, and let's run the numbers again. And this is the importance of like having that ongoing, plan, or that ongoing relationship to say, like, as circumstances changes, let's see how our plan has updated.
Oh yeah, that's such a great point. Like I've long said that it's financial planning, not a financial plan. Because the moment you have a plan in place, it's already outdated. Yep. So it's coming back to, you basically take a guess you go, this is where I am today. Will I be okay? And we're like, yeah, we think you're going to be okay. And then we come back 6 months, a year later, we update everything and we go, okay, now how are you doing? Did it get worse? Did it get better? With this new data, what changes should we make? And that's really what planning is.
Mhm.
Yeah. What a wonderful point. What about, when people are scared about spending, what kind of
Yeah.
mistakes have you seen or things that we want to see them avoid?
That's a really good question. My mind goes to two different places. Like, either like we miss the plot and like the moment's over, and they
Mm.
just waited too long, and now they can't do the things that they really wanted to do. Um,
Yeah.
that's really sad.
That's a real
Um,
bummer. Yeah. When you see that one happen.
or B, sometimes they'll make rash decisions and like they just go spend a lot of money. It doesn't happen often, but it's more like impulse. We're like, hey, let's run this together because we want to make sure that the numbers are right.
Yeah, I think I've definitely seen it both ways. I have seen clients who spend more than they should on the front end, and then it's just coming back to them and saying like, "Hey, with what you've spent, here's the amount you can reasonably take from the portfolio to be
Mm-hmm.
okay." And it went down a little bit. It usually doesn't go down dramatically.
No.
It just goes down a bit, but they just helping them understand that there's a consequence to
Mm-hmm.
doing that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, so long as it works for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
like to
that
say
makes
like
sense.
retirement plans, they don't fail. They just simply adjust and they adapt,
Exactly. Exactly.
and so it's like go spend the money now, so long as, and we know this ahead of time, that you are comfortable with the understanding that what our data suggests is like later on, we're not gonna be able to spend that same amount.
Right. One of the common things that I've seen for people who've been self managing on their own in the past is that they'll be a bit too conservative
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
early on with how they're investing. So they'll have so much in fixed income or in cash
Mm-hmm.
that they really don't have enough in the stock market to keep up with purchasing power. And
Yeah.
purchasing power literally just means that like, a gallon of gasoline cost, what, some amount 20 years ago, and it's going to cost whatever it is today. And 20 years from now, it's going to be a lot more. And we have to keep up with that. So keeping money just in bonds and cash won't do that for us. That will get eroded away. So we need to have money in the stock market.
And it's counterintuitive. I mean, like just pausing on that for a moment to like expand that, a lot like maybe it's not conventional wisdom, but like logic in a way would tell me like, okay, this is what I have. I don't want to lose it.
Right. Put it under a mattress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then like I could ration it out. I'm always going to be safe.
Right.
But like the hidden risk is like inflation. I remember seeing a chart. I don't know if we have it up here, but it basically said like for every point of an interest rate, what this does, or every point of inflation rather, what this
Mm-hmm.
does to your dollar. And I can't remember at what point it was like it just cut, and maybe it was like 4 or 5%. It basically just cut your portfolio, like the real value in half.
Yeah. Well, another way to flip that would just be that, we're the way we're building retirement plans for clients and the rates of return, we're probably looking at nominal rates of return for
Mm-hmm.
clients on a 70-30 or a 60-40 portfolio. We're probably somewhere in the 7 to 8% range, probably somewhere around there.
Right.
And if you just go to fixed income, you're probably going to like more like 4 or 5%. So it's probably
Yep.
about, I'm going to simplify and say it's about half of what
Right.
that is. If you go and say like, okay, so that's what I need out of, that's what my draw is going to be on. I'm going to take 4 or 5% on a 4 and 5% level of investment.
Yep.
Well, all of a sudden, like the amount of investments you need to have to sustain 30 to 40 years of withdrawal when the return is so low is dramatically larger. I didn't actually run the numbers right now, but it would be a substantially larger portfolio balance I would need at the beginning to be
Mhm.
okay having a really conservative portfolio.
Right, because one of the things, and this gets a little technical, but like when you start looking at traditional financial planning, is like you have a baseline starting amount that you could take out, and we actually inflate that each and every year. So that number that's coming out is getting larger. And if your investments, to your point, are not growing at that same rate, you are drawing more than you need to, and your plan could be in trouble. So it is interesting. I remember looking at that initially and saying like, I wonder how many people are actually being too conservative because they actually think in their mind, like, I'm being safe. I'm not going to lose this. This is all I have. But now it's not keeping up with the growth.
So yeah, I think those are the big things. I think the biggest thing is if you're the type of person who has a fear of spending, see whether or not you can do this on your own. If you can go through these, like the things that we talked about today and start to figure out ways, how will I do this? One of the biggest things is once you realize what you're going to spend, pay yourself that amount, Structure it so you're sending it to yourself on a monthly basis, even a bi-monthly basis. If you got paid a paycheck and you want to get paid on the same days now to have it still hit the bank account, go for it. You just have to figure out where should it come from and why, and make sure you're doing tax withholdings correctly if they need to from retirement accounts and the like. But figure out what works for you and go put it to work. And hopefully, and definitely, I think you heard that here, align it with the things that matter to you in your life, because it's just a tool, and make sure that you're using it to help you.
That's right. Yeah. Go on the test drive, right? You've worked hard, you've saved. No, like, go use the money. Give yourself that permission. Love it.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks, man.
See you later.